Good evening, and welcome to Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. I'm Gene Preuss with the League of Women Voters of Houston. If you've watched this show for any length of time, or if maybe you're a new viewer, you know we cover a wide variety of topics, from politics, of course. We talk to politicians, we talk to people in the community, we talk to organizers. It is all about making us better informed voters. That's just one aspect of what the League does. Perhaps you know us from the Voter's Guide. Well, there's a lot of opportunities, and we hope that you will think about joining the League of Women Voters. And tonight we're going to talk about opportunities for new members. So we're going to talk about our Rising Stars program. We're going to be talking about new member orientation, and we're going to be talking to some rising stars. This is our leadership program that helps develop members of the Houston area League of Women Voters. If you want more information, if you're thinking about joining, all you have to do is go to our webpage. I'm going to show you that in just a second. That's at lwvhouston.org, lwvhouston.org, and you'll see a variety of ways of not only joining, but of opportunities to getting involved. With me tonight is Mika Rao Kalapatapu, one of the board members for the League of Women Voters of Houston, and she is in charge of new member orientation. Mia, welcome to the show tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Gene, for including me. I'm so excited to talk about how folks can get more involved with the League of Women Voters.
So tell us, what is the process once they actually join the League and what the League is doing?
Yeah, so by visiting our website, you'll see that there's an opportunity to join either as an individual or as a household. The individual membership is about $70. You can cover your whole household for a little over $100. We also have a student membership opportunity. And after folks join, they are immediately emailed and welcomed to the League, and we survey them with an opportunity to hear about what opportunities they'd like to get involved with. So we have lots of different ways that our members volunteer with us. We have a very active group that works on voter registration. We have a lot of needs as it relates to marketing and communications, whether it's working on our social media stuff, whether it's writing about the important work going on to defend democracy. We have opportunities related to our voter guide, which is a very robust way of informing voters about the candidates and what they stand for. So there are a multitude of ways to get involved. We've got events, lots of different things. And so once you sign up to become a member, you receive a link to then take a survey, share what your interests are. And once you complete that, somebody from the League gets back to you to kind of chat a little bit more. And we play matchmaker with your interests and get you involved in a committee.
I think one of the big things that people see or people think about when they think about League of Women Voters is the Voter's Guide but there's a wide variety of avenues that they can explore, correct?
Yes. I mean, I think that, when we think about politics, we tend to feel, like you got to take a side, and it can be a bit polarizing, but really, for us, it's more about civic engagement. It's about being involved with your community and supporting education and awareness of what the issues are and how they impact people. We have a group that meets once a month in the Loop, and they meet on Zoom right now, but in the past they used to meet in person. And they have monthly events where they talk about environmental issues, gun safety, education. So the issues that matter to all of us as citizens and community members.
So you're in charge of the new member orientation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was a new member too pretty recently, a couple of years ago when I got involved, and it can be a bit daunting to know how to plug in and where to plug in. And some of us are like, we're just interested in lots of things. So we developed the new member orientation as a 30-minute presentation that a couple of us can walk new members through all the ways that they can get involved. And so they can make an informed decision when they get that survey, like, oh, actually I'm mostly interested in getting out the vote, or I'm mostly interested in supporting awareness activities through our guide, or I'd love to do phone banks. Like, make sure you let me know when those are happening. And so it's what's also nice. I mean, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was we realized that we don't have to do everything in person. Houston is a really big place. It can be hard for folks to get from point A to point B, especially, given other commitments in life. So we've been doing the new member orientation virtually via Zoom. The last one we did was a Saturday morning. We had a really great turnout. We can even offer it individually, because I can just jump on a Zoom call with somebody and say, let me just go through what we all have to offer. So it's very flexible, and hopefully it provides folks with what they need to figure out a way to get involved.
And you say it's only about 30 minutes, but it sounds like it's just full of information.
So it is robust, but it's also one of those things where it kind of gives you like the big picture look at what the League of Women Voters is doing in the current year. And then once you kind of decide like, okay, this is the path I want to take, we can then partner with you to figure out exactly how to get more involved in those types of volunteer activities. Some people, they want to do in-person stuff. They want to get out there and meet people. Other people are not as interested in that, but they have some time in their day and they'd like to do things that they can do from home or in between like work and family obligations. So we try to find opportunities that work for people.
So if I were to join today, when could I expect to go through the orientation process?
Yeah, we haven't scheduled the next one, but I'm planning to do it late summer, early fall, like right before things get really crazy, but after people's summer vacations are behind them. So I think if you become a member, you will be subscribed to our email newsletter, and you will receive a notification on that, as well as on our social media channels about when that upcoming date is. And in addition, we just, welcome folks to reach out to us individually. Our contact information is on the website, and we can always schedule some one-on-one time to connect as well.
Yeah, but I guess it could also be beneficial for existing members who've been around for a while too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think things keep changing, and I'm always learning new things that we're doing. So yeah, we'd love to have anyone who's interested sign up for an orientation. And thank you, Jean, for all that you do to get the word out about the League of Women Voters.
Well, thank you, Mia Rao Kalapatapu. Thank you so much for joining us, and you're a board member and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about new member orientation.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. One of the programs that new members can join in is the Rising Stars program. With us tonight, Dr. Renee Cross. Dr. Cross, can you tell us a little bit about the origins of Rising Stars and what it does within the League of Women Voters of Houston?
The Rising Stars actually started out as an award, just to recognize, younger folks that were really engaged in the community, whether it was voter registration or turn out the vote efforts, just about any civic engagement endeavor. And from that award grew this incredible organization called the Rising Stars. And Rising Stars as a program began 10 years ago this year, so in 2011. And over the years, there's been anywhere from 10 to 27 participants. This year, marking our largest cohort so far with the 27 participants. And as with everything, the activities really took on the passions and the personalities of those involved. Some of the Rising Star cohorts were very much behind the scenes and very engaged behind the scenes with the League of Women Voters, with their traditional activities, whether it was voter registration on Citizenship Day or phone banking at one of the local media outlets. Other cohorts have assisted the league with some of those activities, but have also created their own projects. For example, this year's cohort, the 2020-2021 cohort, have tackled a number of issues ranging from voter registration, voter education, to environmental issues and how to advocate for your particular issues. So again, there isn't a cookie cutter look from year to year for this program, but I can say that regardless of what they have done over the last 10 years, they have contributed substantially to the Houston region.
Can you explain for the viewers the application and selection process to be included in the Rising Stars program?
Well, it is a selection process, so folks do have to apply. In fact, they can go to the League of Women Voters Houston website, lwvhouston.org, all lowercase, and access the information about the program, and then complete a brief application and attach a resume. We are now approaching the end of this year's cohort, and we are currently recruiting for the next program. And our application deadline is July 15th. And of course, it's self-applications. Of course, we hope that previous Rising Stars, as well as anybody that's really involved in civic engagement, will encourage others. Now, and as far as others goes, others is defined very, very widely. Oftentimes folks think, okay, League of Women Voters, it's for women, right? I mean, that's logical. And for a very long time, that's exactly what it was. And then for a very long time, the League of Women Voters was pretty much, stereotyped as being an organization for older white women. That's no longer the case. The League of Women Voters of Houston reflects the diversity of Houston, and whether we're talking gender, race, ethnicity, straight, gay, whatever, everyone is welcome to apply to the League's Rising Stars program, and of course become a member. And I can happily say that our Rising Stars cohort, those that are actually actively participating, also reflect the diversity of this, very multicultural city. So again, this isn't your grandma's league anymore. So we definitely want everyone to apply.
Are there any fees associated with the Rising Stars program?
There's no cost except for time. And you don't have to be a member of the league in order to apply. Of course, we hope you will along the way, but so no direct cost. And the time commitment varies somewhat just on how involved folks get. For example, in this year's class, we have people that probably spend maybe 2 to 3 hours a month on the program. And then we have others that probably spend 10 or 12 hours a month. That's part of the beauty of having a program with many participants, is that they work together and make sure the final product is achieved, regardless if maybe one month somebody's really busy, then someone else can slip in and help cover it.
Renee Cross, thank you very much for giving us insight into the Rising Stars program. The application deadline is July 15th, so you've got about 2 weeks to apply for the next cohort. And Dr. Cross says they'll notify everybody by August, and then the cohort will begin sometime in August. To learn more about what goes on in the Rising Stars program, we have several Rising Stars members who are part of the current cohort. And so tonight we're going to hear from Catherine Colbert, Lourdes Zavaleta, Tanya Richardson, Daniel Meza, and Catherine Summerlin. So first of all, let's find out a little bit about each of the members. First of all, Tanya, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, and grew up in Virginia, Tennessee, and ended up going to school at Vanderbilt and Purdue for graduate school in geology and geophysics, of all things. I ended up in oil and gas industry and have been working for Chevron for about the past 10 years. And it's kind of bounced me around a little bit from Indiana to Louisiana, and I've been in Houston for about 3 years now.
Okay. And what got you interested in the League of Women Voters in the first place?
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of the country last year, there was a bunch of excitement about the upcoming presidential election. And I was personally feeling some of this anxiety in addition to the pandemic and really wanted to get out there and do something. So when it came to kind of voting rights, I got a little more involved and started reading on that, particularly around how people can be excluded from certain voting locations and how, we need to get the voice of everyone who can out there. So I literally started looking around for different opportunities and immediately found the League of Women Voters of Houston and saw that they were doing a lot of voter registration, ended up becoming a VDVR right away, and then was out at some locations for voter registration, and that cascaded into some online Twitter monitoring in order to capture people's questions and address them, and ended up on election day out at the polls monitoring some locations outside of the polls to make sure that there was no acts of injustice going on anywhere, that we could call a hotline and help out. So that kind of got me kicked off in the league. And after that, I was just looking for more engagement and found the Rising Stars program on the league website and thought, that would be a good way to just get better exposure to the local issues and to start getting involved in building out my network. So that's kind of how I ended up in the Rising Stars.
Okay, Daniel, let me switch over to you and ask you the same thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And, thanks for this time. So my name is Daniel. I'm son of immigrant parents. I was born in Houston, raised in Spring, which is just north of Houston. I'm a first generation college graduate. I graduated from U of H in political science. And I first started working in civic engagement with an organization called Mi Familia Vota, which kind of focus on the Latinx Hispanic community, the youth, trying to get more people registered and active in our elections locally and nationally. And that was back in 2014. And since then, I've worked for another nonprofit called Baker Ripley, which is a pretty big nonprofit here in Texas. They have several community centers where they also, besides focusing on getting people connected to resources, they also focus on getting people more civically engaged, get them registered to vote. They do leadership training for people in the community. And I first heard of the League of Women Voters just kind of in passing when I first began with Mi Familia Vota and also with Baker Ripley. They were always kind of just, I'd see them at different events, or I would see them out on the street, like I said, at different functions and just in different meetings. And, at first I thought it was only for women, like other people think. And no, it's all inclusive. And I think the origin story of the League of Women Voters is just, really beautiful. I was listening on NPR earlier today about Alice Paul and how, they did the first picket at the White House ever and got I believe it was the 19th Amendment passed, and just all the hard work they put into the movement to truly provide universal suffrage at that time. And I like the League of Women Voters because, in my opinion, it's just such a pure organization, nonpartisan. They have a really clear and focused goal. I've always enjoyed their voters guides. I used to pass out the voters guides back in 2014 with Mi Familia Vota in English and Spanish. I think they're very useful for the general community, that they don't vote because they don't know who to vote for or what the issues are. And, they don't have the time, or, don't want to take the time. They see it as too difficult to make a decision, or they see themselves as not knowledgeable or qualified enough to make a decision to vote. And I think that the League of Women's Voters Guide is extremely helpful. And, I just love that voters guide, and I love the League of Women Voters and their mission, like I mentioned.
My name is Catherine Summerlin. I am a first-generation immigrant. I came from the island of Trinidad here with my family and settled in Pasadena. And as a result of my very modest upbringing, I learned that social justice issues were of a significant importance to me, and I've carried that forward in everything that I've done, especially as it relates to pursuing my master's in public administration. Underlying those that work with a sense of social equity is very much a part of who I am.
And how did you get involved with the League of Women Voters?
I actually have been a volunteer here and there with various organizations registering voters over the last 25 years. And I know that the League of Women Voters has been a huge presence in Houston. And after working in public service for, quite some time, I thought, you know what, I need to get back to my roots. I need to get to the point where I understand what the public wants, who they are, what is driving folks today, especially post George Floyd. And so the League presented a huge opportunity to me to really get back to my roots. And so I felt that this was an appropriate time to do that.
I am Lourdes Zavaleta. I am a journalist here in Houston, Texas. I work for a publication called Outsmart Magazine. It's an LGBTQ magazine. So yeah, that's what I do.
How did you get involved, or what interested you in the League of Women Voters? How long have you been a member?
So I have appreciated the work of the League for some time now. I actually first learned about the organization a few years ago through Outsmart. I work as an editor and a reporter, and one year we were working on some election coverage, and a local leader that I was interviewing recommended the League of Women Voters for a go-to for people to check out to see where candidates stand on certain issues. And then last summer, another local activist, Lou Weaver, who serves as the League of Women Voters of Houston's Rising Star co-chair, reached out to me about the opportunity to join Rising Stars, and I eagerly applied in hopes to help the League further its mission to strengthen civic engagement here in Houston.
All right, Catherine, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, and how did you get involved with the League of Women Voters?
So I grew up in upstate New York. I've lived in a few different states, some easier to vote in than others. I moved to Texas about 7 years ago, and currently I own my own consulting firm where I do process safety consulting for oil and gas and petrochemical companies. And I think it started at a young age. When I turned 18, one of the first things I did was register to vote. And it's been kind of instilled in me from a young age that voting is important. And I've been following the League of Women Voters, but not really involved with them. I love the voting guide that they produce every year. I use that not only for my own reference, but trying to refer other people to that. And I love the whole idea of bipartisanship that the League has. And so I haven't really truly been involved until I applied for the Rising Stars program last year. And I applied because I think, that whole background of really being conscious of what's happening in my community and wanting to make a greater impact. And, as I said, I've lived in Houston for 7 years now, and I guess I'm finally ready to jump into Texas politics, if you will, and get more involved, especially after the last few years that have been a little questionable as far as involvement and normal people involvement, if you will. So I thought it was time to really jump in with both feet.
As part of the Rising Stars program, you have to do a project. Can you tell us about your project, what you're doing, and how you kind of developed it?
Yes, so there are 3 main focus areas that the Rising Stars are working on this year: environmental justice, criminal justice, and housing insecurity. I'm a part of the housing insecure group, and we're working to engage homeless and housing insecure Houstonians in the voting process by creating and distributing literature that informs people on their voting rights. And we're also hosting voter registration drives in areas where homeless people tend to congregate. I was interested in joining that group because I saw a crossover there between my work that I do at my day job and also the outreach that the Rising Stars group wanted to do. According to a University of Houston research, 25% of homeless youth in Houston identify as LGBTQ. And in addition to family rejection, LGBTQ youth can also end up on the streets due to harassment at school or abuse and neglect from state foster care agencies. And the Rising Stars Housing Insecure group wanted to provide voting access to all homeless people in Houston, and that includes the LGBTQ homeless population.
I think a lot of people are under the impression that homeless people, because they don't maybe have a fixed residence, aren't eligible to vote. How do you overcome that objection?
So that's actually not true. And that is one of the resources that we created. So we have an FAQ page on some things that people who are homeless or their advocates might have questions on. And when you register to vote, there is a question on there that asks you for an address. And that doesn't have to be a permanent address or the place that you're living. It just has to be somewhere where you tend to spend most of your time, and you can consider that your home. So a homeless person who wants to register to vote could put, for example, the street corner that they spend the most time at as their address and still be eligible to vote.
In some of our early days, first meetings as Rising Stars, we were encouraged to develop projects. And so we were doing some brainstorming, kind of throwing ideas out. And a number of us were really interested in better understanding the intersection of environmental and social issues, particularly in Harris County. And so we kind of threw that idea out there, and it rolled forward. And when we were meeting and refining that idea, because environmental issues can span a very wide range, we narrowed it down to more flooding related issues, and kind of formed a group called Environmental Justice out of that, with a focus on some of the flooding problems across Harris County. So that actually turned out to be a very timely topic. A lot of conversation has come up at the county level and the commissioners' court meetings this year about big gaps that have happened in flood mitigation funding, particularly for BIPOC and LIC neighborhoods that are, typically lower income mixed neighborhoods, and they're just not seeing the same funding support as other communities across Harris County. So we've kind of done a number of different small projects to, dip our toes in the water and start expanding our influence and kind of making these connections with local groups. So we've really just recently started connecting with West Street Recovery, which is one of these groups that's active in Northeast Houston in the Greens and Halls Bayous, that is really on the ground there, building those connections with community members, trying to understand their needs, particularly in relation to kind of recovery after flooding. And then also trying to get these people motivated and inspired and trained to reach out and engage that first level of representation. So your commissioners locally, reaching out to judges, your mayor, and more getting involved. And so we've been able to attend some of those meetings, and we're set up to do some additional volunteer work with them so that we can kind of really understand the issues and learn what it is to be a part of that effort, which is particularly important to me as I feel a lot more separated from that. And I really want to understand and kind of dig into some of these issues and help where I can. In addition, we've also identified some speakers. Jim Blackburn with Rice University has come in and given a talk at a happy hour to understand some of these complex combinations or interactions between environmental issues, particularly flooding, the history of that in Houston and Harris County, and some of the challenges and solutions that we need to drive towards. So really getting that broad understanding, and then starting to get that experience of engaging with communities, and then also engaging with representatives. So I have to say that I've had a couple opportunities now to prepare testimony for both legislators at the state level, but then also more city community groups, and have given this testimony. And just the act of training and getting the experience of doing that, even in a group of people, has been a very safe space to kind of step out and gain that first kind of exposure to local politics. I think that's one of the hardest things for people to kind of cross, that kind of bridge. It's a lot of uncertainty about how it'll be received, what kind of message they want to share, and if it's even a valid message or anyone will care. And so I think we really need to, I like that aspect of fostering the understanding and kind of the comfort in communities to say, yes, people care, and we want to help mobilize that effort and get your voices heard.
In the beginning, it was just kind of getting all the info together, because, you know, the average person, if they want to go out and learn more about local government and how it's organized, it's going to take them a little bit to just kind of learn the inner workings. Who would I call for this issue? Who would I call for flooding? And who's in charge of upkeeping the roads in my area, especially if I'm, you know, not what's unincorporated Harris County. And so we've just kind of been organizing that info in preparation of educating the general public with that info, including if the general public had a complaint about historical flooding, who would they reach out to? You know, because the average person, unfortunately, is not equipped with that knowledge of who to reach out to if there's an issue in my neighborhood. And unfortunately, like Tanya mentioned, people of color, in my experience working in the nonprofit sector, working in communities such as East Aldine, that experiences, you know, severe and chronic flooding. A lot of them just, you know, don't know who to reach out to, or may not feel comfortable enough to reach out to their local leaders. And so part of our effort is to educate the general public on what can you do, who should you talk to, who can you talk to, help them navigate the different avenues available to them. And so that's, you know, that's been my, I guess you could say, like, my personal investment into the project is the desire to educate others and the desire to equip others with the knowledge of feeling empowered when there's an issue in their area, in the neighborhood, of feeling empowered and knowing exactly who to reach out to, who to talk to. Hopefully, you know, educating them to testify at commissioner's court if necessary, or reaching out to their local state rep, which, as Tanya mentioned, we've had experience, and we've, you know, first we've gone into it, taught ourselves how to do this, and in order to teach others.
We originally were looking at doing a big community presentation, but I think we've kind of pivoted away from that, and we're really looking to get boots on the ground and go in and help volunteer with some of the existing organizations that are already there and making an impact, and have those relationships with the community members to really help them, you know, and I don't want to say help them see what's going on, because they know what's going on, right? They're living this every day, every rainstorm. Unfortunately, all the rain in Houston is crazy, and we get a lot of it. And when it comes in big buckets, and it floods those areas very easily. So they know it, they know what they're dealing with, but we want to help them and, you know, show them that the rest of the community cares, and, you know, we're there to support them. For instance, there's a big commissioner's court hearing, not really hearing, but the meeting next week with the commissioner's court, where Russ Poppy will be talking about the plans for the flood control district, although he's leaving, you know, and how they're going to address the funding shortfalls that are unfortunately affecting the Greens and Halls bayous more than some of the other bayous. So there's a community group that's working to really mobilize people and have a rally before the commissioners meeting next week. So we're trying to help out with that, and we've been on some trainings with that, some of our group members. But like I said, just really trying to get boots on the ground and help these communities in those bayou watersheds as much as we can in a year, which is a very short time to do a whole lot. So.
Okay, Catherine Summerlin, can you tell us about the project you're involved in?
I actually am involved in two. And the reason I decided on these two was because I'm involved in disaster financial reimbursement for FEMA with Harris County. And so I decided to get involved with our environmental justice group as well as our housing insecurity group. And the reason I chose those is because when a disaster hits, those, understanding how the lack of housing affects people after a disaster is really important. And also the underlying environmental justice concerns as it relates to resilience, climate change, and sustainability. So those were the two areas that I pushed to get involved in so I can learn more.
Daniel, what do you see as kind of the next step in the project?
And so, like Tanya mentioned, in the next month or two, we'll be ramping up different volunteer opportunities, especially as the pandemic starts to kind of, I hope it starts to wind down and we'll be able to get out there and talk to people face to face and do more volunteer projects. Hopefully we'll be able to do, maybe I was thinking of like a round table or different presentations to get people together and get this conversation going. I think that's beneficial, going to where people are at, to their local community centers and finding people from that area and talking to them in their own area, and just, bringing info, not as experts, but as I guess you could say, as fellow community members, and try to impart this passion that they, the hope is that they're even more passionate about it since it happens to them, the severe flooding. And so we just need to help them understand the inner workings.
All right, excellent. Have you guys done anything out in the Aldine community? I know you were talking about Aldine, but have you worked with the community itself in Aldine?
Well, we're actually just now getting more deeply involved in West Street Recovery. So I mentioned that group. And there's also another group, Northeast Action Collective. And those two organizations are kind of active in the same region and can kind of collaborate. But we've been attending a couple of their community meetings. And I was lucky enough to have some time just last night, actually, to hop into one of those meetings. And it's starting to give me a flavor of what are the actual community concerns. And they were talking about organizing backpack collections and giveaways for kind of emergency response gear or equipment in case people have a disaster come through and they need, a go bag to grab. And they also spent about an hour talking about different generators and really working with the community to understand, we have this much money, we can have this size generator, this number of generators, what do you want to do? And how do you want to spend this money? And it was a fantastic conversation where it's regular people on the street trying to talk about, we've got these resources, how do we distribute them? And what's fair? What are we comfortable with? And I thought the organizers did a great job of keeping a very open dialogue. There's also a lot of talk about preparation for next Tuesday's Commissioner Court meeting that's coming up. And that's going to be where Russ Poppy is going to present kind of, I guess, a new plan to address this gap in flood mitigation funding. And so they're talking about how they can organize community members to come in and speak physically and give testimony and the logistics of that. So that's all really inspiring to see that direct engagement. And I hope to take part at least somewhat in next Tuesday's movement. But we also want to continue this work with West Street Recovery. And they have a lot of on the ground activities with the community. And we, coming in from kind of outside that community group, we think that it's necessary first to build that foundation of making the connections with the people who already live there and kind of support the existing activities. For a while, we were wondering about, creating a workshop, either digitally or in person, and coming in and presenting about flooding issues to these groups. And eventually we did walk back on that a little bit, feeling like we'd be kind of coming in and telling people what they should be doing when we're not really part of the community itself. So I think we've learned, and kind of through discussion and through some feedback with Bayou City Initiative, to kind of the right approach maybe to take when you're engaging local communities. I don't know, Danny, do you have anything to work on that?
Yeah, on that specifically, and I guess to your question also, Dr. Jean, in terms of working with the Aldine community, I've worked with them in the past when I was working with census and voter engagement. And so recently, through my work in the Aldine community, I've wanted to leverage my connections and reach out to the community members, many of which I've talked to and engaged with. And I agree with Tanya, we don't want to come in and kind of like prescribe to them what we think the solution is to the problem. But in the past, Baker Ripley and East Aldine has had forums, especially with was it Hurricane Imelda or was it just a tropical storm? They had an Imelda forum where local people came and were able to voice their opinions. And so, thankfully there's still time if we do want to go into that community center and invite people to join us. And I guess just kind of rethinking what would be most helpful to this community. Recently, I thought about doing like a roundtable discussion and just kind of getting a list of what, having them talk to us more than we talk to them, and just us being there as, as a support system, as a voice for the voiceless, while we work to empower them, and just build a community with them, and introduce them to environmental justice and get them thinking about these issues in a different frame, instead of them feeling helpless, help maybe empowering them to look at this and adopt environmental justice as like a more positive and hopeful approach to eventually, resolving this chronic flooding in their area.
I always tell students, I say, I teach at a college. I tell the university students, I say, don't be distracted by the national politics, because it doesn't matter what AOC says or what Bernie Sanders says today, because it's really what somebody like
Mayor Turner.
Mayor Turner, or one of your local city council members, or your local county representatives. It's your county commissioner. It matters what they do. That's going to affect you on an everyday basis. And people are, they don't know how to respond to that. But because, it's kind of I don't know, maybe it's the political candy is more attractive than the work. And they don't know how to interact with government officials other than posting something on social media. And that has a limited reach.
That's actually been one of the big gains that I've gotten out of this program too. And it's come through in just conversations with my family. So I'm trying to talk to my mother about some of the issues they're experiencing. She lives in Alaska. She's like, I don't know what to do. All this stuff happens at the federal level and I feel so powerless. And I kind of go, yeah, you kind of might be a little powerless at the federal level, but what you really have power is your state and your local representatives. And that's what somebody has very little view on. You're right. And I think it might just be kind of a media thing, kind of a challenge that happens. And so it's like, this is how you start to get involved. And with the experience in the Rising Stars, I'm able to more clearly lay out, this is what you need to start researching. This is how you can reach out to your representatives via letter or look for meetings. And I think that really helped my mom get kind of her head wrapped around what are the first steps to getting engaged. And I think at the local level is the way to go for people. And that's unfortunately the least visible for most of us.
Daniel, what is the thing that you're getting out of Rising Stars?
I think in the very beginning, I was just kind of impressed by, that we're just bringing everybody together. I think, Dr. Jean, we have like 30, around 30 or maybe a little bit less currently in the Rising Stars. So I was just impressed by just the diversity, both in terms of like background, profession. We have shared common passions, but also just kind of like more, because we did split up into like 3 different groups. So just the way those passions divert just, slightly, but we all understand how everything comes full circle. So I think just understanding that there's people out here in Harris County that are just as passionate as myself, and willing to do the work, for not just like, I don't want to say it's easy, but not just the easy stuff like going out and registering voters, but doing the harder stuff, such as reaching out to, the people currently facing homelessness, or reaching out to the formerly incarcerated, disenfranchised, and reaching out to those families that are just too busy to care but are constantly being threatened by flooding at every major storm, and that feel like the city and the county has abandoned them. It's very easy to feel that way. And honestly, I mean, I don't think the impression that they're getting tells a different story unless they really dig into and understand how slow government moves. And instead of getting disenchanted by that, they should, in my opinion, they should be empowered and just try to keep positive and understand that, like Tanya just mentioned, the only way to push change is, first of all, by focusing at the local level. And then, second of all, just getting out there and educating oneself of your local leaders. I didn't know who the county commissioners were until a few years ago.
Lourdes, what is your takeaway from the Rising Stars program?
This experience has been super eye-opening. I came into the program with some knowledge about the issues here in Harris County, and now I'm leaving with a better understanding of those issues and ideas for solutions. I've also gotten the opportunity to volunteer and network with my peers and other leaders, so overall it's been great.
Catherine Colbert, what is your takeaway?
The takeaway that I got, and I guess I'll be a little selfish about it, is the really the community that's there, and that is willing to help people that can step out of their comfort zone. When I first started this program, after the first meeting with Renee and Lou, Renee Cross and Lou Weaver, the 2 directors of the Rising Stars program, I was a little hesitant, and I'm like, I don't really know, right? Like, I joined this group so that I can learn how to be a better advocate, and because I don't really know. And Renee's comment back to me was, you'll figure it out, lean on your team members. And I have, and the team has been great, and we all bring different strengths. And I think that's even a glaring reality, if you will, that there's a famous quote of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I don't remember who said it, but that's kind of what I'm getting out of this, is I'm seeing, people that are coming from different walks of life and different backgrounds, and we're all able to really pull together and each add something to this project to really make it a success, much greater success than I ever would have been able to do on my own. So the friendships that I've made in the group have been tremendous. We've had some happy hours, both in person and virtual. And I've gotten together with some of the team members just individually. And, I think the friendships and the lifelong bonds that we've formed are really going to be strong. And now that we have a shared background also, I think we'll be a force to deal with.
Catherine Summerlin, what do you see as the benefit, the takeaway from the Rising Stars program?
For the first time, I've been able to get in touch with stakeholder groups that I'd never even heard of. For instance, groups like West Street Recovery, groups like the Bayou City Initiative. Groups like that have a huge imprint in Houston, and they're continuing to grow because people are beginning to realize the importance of climate change, the importance of social justice, and the importance of environmental justice, and how housing and security plays into that. In addition to that, my particular involvement in environmental justice is capturing all of flood control's capital projects and isolating them, distilling the budget information as it relates to those projects, so that people can understand how much they're spending, in what watersheds they're spending those dollars in, and how that affects the bottom line. In addition to housing and security, I'm involved in getting folks who are on the margins of poverty, who have unsustainable housing options, to get involved in the electoral process. A lot of them feel like, because I don't have a permanent home, I'm not eligible to vote. And so with COVID affecting 1 out of 7 now who are currently on the streets as a result of, lack of rental assistance and so forth, we felt it was very important to educate these folks to ensure that they participate in voting, that they understand that, criminal background doesn't necessarily preclude them from casting a ballot. So all of those things play into one another. So I felt it important to get involved in those things. We're experiencing a huge amount of apathy in the electoral process. People are not familiar with, issues that affect them. They feel like they're left out of the process. And within government, we almost feel like we need to just continue steamrolling ahead without thinking about and truly understanding the implications of our decisions. And so making sure that internally I can affect change by adding a little bit of perspective, but externally making sure that people in the public understand that we in the public sector care about you, and your decisions, your day-to-day life is something that we are going to continue to try to improve.
Catherine Summerlin, Tanya Richardson, Daniel Meza, Catherine Colbert, and Lourdes Zavaleta, I want to thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight. And once again, if you're interested in joining, remember, join the League of Women Voters, and you can go to our webpage. I'll show that again here, www.lwvhouston.org. And you'll see where you can click the button to become a member, and then also scroll down a little bit more and you'll find the Rising Star link. Remember, you have until very soon to apply, so we've got a couple of weeks, but you don't put it off too long. Renee, once again, remind us of the process.
It's not an automatic entry. We have 2 co-directors for Rising Stars. I'm one of them. My partner in crime is Lou Weaver. And we go through all the applications, all the answers, the resumes, and so forth, and make the final selection.
And you should have a notification if you apply by when?
Most likely be mid-August and probably August 15th. However, we should be able to notify everyone, whether they are accepted or not. Everyone will be, notified. We will follow up with everyone around August 1st.
I want to thank all my guests tonight. Of course, Renee Cross, Mika Kalapatapu, both board members with the League of Women Voters of Houston, for participating in the show. And I want to thank the Rising Stars, Catherine Summerlin, Lourdes Zavaleta, Catherine Colbert, Tanya Richardson, and Daniel Meza. Thank you for all being on the show. I want to thank you for joining us tonight on Public Affairs Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. Now, it's been 16 months since we've been in the studio. The show is recorded so there's no call-in. COVID has affected us all. And to all these rising stars who went through the program this year, they were doing this in the midst of COVID. And so I salute them. But I also want to thank each and every one of you for joining us over the past 16 months as we've had recorded shows. Now, hopefully, this is going to be the last fully recorded show, and in August we'll be back in studio, which is good because we have another election campaign coming up. We should have conversations with the candidates. We'll start scheduling those. We still do some on Zoom, but we're going to try to get back into the studios. As Houston, Texas, and the nation try to go back to normal, or to some semblance of normal. And so we're all looking forward to that. And thank you so much for wearing your masks, for getting vaccinated, and for staying socially distanced. It's been a tough year and a half, and we look forward to improvement on the social front. Thank you again for joining us here for the League of Women Voters. Remember, lwvhouston.org, that's our website page. It's also our social media tags, and that's how you can go onto the web page again. You can become a member of the League, and we hope you'll do that. And also you can join the Rising Stars cohort. Remember, the deadline to sign up for that is July 15th. You can join the League at any time. Before we go tonight, on May 5th, 1977, Jose Campos Torres, a Houston resident, had been in the Army during the Vietnam conflict, was arrested by Houston police at a nightclub for disorderly conduct, was brutally beaten up, and ultimately drowned in Buffalo Bayou while in police custody. 44 years later, on June 27th, 2021, Houston Police Department Chief Troy Finner issued an apology, and I want to share that with you today.
I stand with this family, and I stand with all families who have suffered the injustices of police officers who said and held up a right hand. I'm a serve and I'm a protect, and I'm gonna protect the constitutional rights. And for me to read the history, and I don't want to be too long, but I want y'all to feel my heart. For me to read that history, and our court system at that time, 1 year probation, $1. It's time out for people to devalue certain people because of their race or whatever's going on in their minds. We're all the same, and we should be treated as such. And if a police officer violates somebody's rights and they kill them, murder them, they should be treated just as any other citizen. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So I want to take this time to pause and say, look, I am honored to be here. I'm honored that y'all would allow me to come in and spend this time with the family. It means something to Troy Finner. So on behalf of this entire city, on behalf of the police department, I apologize to this family. And anything that I can do, I cannot take away the pain. Only God. Something like this that happens to a family, when you transition to what He promised us, that's when that pain will leave. It will not leave on this side of this earth, and I know that. But I'm here as your chief to let you know I'm standing with you and whatever you need me to do. And the final thing I'm gonna say, there's been a lot of monuments erected throughout our city. I don't know if I've seen one with Joe Campos Torres' name on it. I'm standing with you. We're gonna get that done.
I wish you a happy 4th of July. Stay safe. Thank you for joining us. Tune in again for Public Affairs, Public Access on Houston Media Source TV. For the League of Women Voters of Houston, I'm Gene Preuss. Have a good night.